fault. I never should have taken the blame. I never should have been disfellowshipped.
So you were basically disfellowshipped for being the victim of abuse.
Yes.
Okay, tell the story from the beginning. You grew up as a Jehovah Witness.
Yes, I was born and raised as a Jehovah's Witness. I was baptized at 12 years old because the boy that I liked was getting baptized. But right, before that happened, I was 11 years old and I had spent the night with my friend, and her older brother was 16, and he sexually assaulted me in my sleep. And I told her the next day. She didn't believe me. I went home and told my parents, and they believed me, but they said the first thing we need to do is talk to the elders in the congregation.
Yeah,
So
elders instead of police.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, to me, that must have been the right thing to do because I trusted my parents. So we went to the elders and I told them what happened, and they asked if there were witnesses. And I said no, because everyone was asleep. He was in the same bedroom. He was sleeping in there. And um, so they said they would talk to him, and they did. But because he denied it, they came back to us and said it was your word against his. So there's nothing that we can do. And um, I remember my parents, thinking that that wasn't right, and then them telling them that that doesn't, make sense. And they said, we just have to leave these kinds of things in God's hands, God's thing. And so we kind of just pretended like it didn't happen, which was very hard because he was very well liked in the congregation. He was friends with my older sisters. He gave, Bible readings and talks on the stage. And so I had to see him every week. And, there's meetings 3 times a week and service, so it's often that I had to see him. And he would say, hi, Meleah, to me, and he would pretend like nothing happened. And it was very, very hard because you start to question, like, it was that wrong? Like, it's obviously okay with everyone.
Yeah, they normalize it. So he was very well liked. And did
Yes.
you go around, or did anyone warn the congregation of the way he was treated
No,
or
I
behaving?
believed me because he was so well liked, and no one else had said anything. So they just said, there's nothing we can do about it. The Bible says there has to be 2 witnesses. So everything just kind of went back to normal. And then a couple years later, the brothers came to my dad and said some other girls have come forward, so he is going to be disfellowshipped. But they kept it very private. They didn't tell the congregation. They didn't tell anyone um, why he was disfellowshipped or warn anyone about their children. So everyone, I think, assumed it was for a different reason why he got disfellowshipped. And people still, at this point, it got around that I had told about that. And I didn't realize it at this time, but later on I found out that I was known for making up a story about him. So when I was 14 years old, I stayed over with my friend, and I was sexually assaulted by her father,
And
who
he was a Jehovah Witness.
he was Jehovah's Witness, and he wasn't very active. He was an alcoholic, but he still would do the Bible readings at the meetings. Um, but what we were watching TV, and he had asked his daughter to sit in front of him, and he would give her a massage, and she so she did, and then she got really tired, and he said, go sleep on the couch. So she fell asleep over on the couch, and then he was like, come sit over here and I'll massage your shoulders. And being one of Jehovah's Witnesses, I was used to just doing what I was told and being submissive to men. And so I just went and sat over there, even though I felt very uncomfortable. So he massaged my shoulders, and then he touched my breasts, and then he did it a few times, and I just was frozen and didn't know what to say, didn't know what to do. And he stopped, and then he said, I'm going to go to bed. And I went to bed and he went to bed. And then the next day I told his daughter, my friend, and she didn't believe me. She said, "You were dreaming. That's not true." And I said, "No, it happened. I was awake." So I went home and I told my parents what happened, and they said, "We're going to, talk to the brothers again." So we did. And they said, well, there wasn't any witnesses again because his daughter was sleeping. So they said, "We will talk to him and see, what he says, and then we'll go from there." So they spoke to him. He denied it completely and said that, that never happened. He would never do that. And they talked to me again and they read me scriptures online, which they did this the first time when I came forward about the 16-year-old. They read me scriptures online, told me, being honest is really important, and that if I'm lying, I'm like the devil. And I, assured them I was telling the truth, that this really happened, but it was very obvious that they did not believe me. Um,
No.
I did have my cousin at the time I talked to before I told my parents, and I told her what had happened. And she said something similar had happened to her. And I said, "Well, if you talk to the brothers too, they'll know there was more than one person and he can get in trouble." And so she said, "Okay, will." And so she went to tell her parents, and they said, "No, you're not going to do what Meleah does. You're not going to, tell stories and make things up like she does." So
So
they,
you had gotten a bad reputation
yes,
while the 16-year-old were still very popular, and as I see it, people really didn't warn. Like, his privacy was super respected, while you, the
exactly.
alleged victim, was under suspicion, and yeah, your privacy does
Right.
not exist.
Exactly. I didn't realize why, but at the age, 14, there were a lot of teenagers my age in my congregation, but they all kind of stopped associating with me and talking to me. And I would find out that there were get-togethers and things, and I was never invited. And before all this happened, I was friends with them, and so um, I come to find out just a few years ago, I talked to my cousin about all of that, that the one that said it happened to her, and she told me what her parents said. So I didn't know this my whole life until a few years ago, why everyone shunned me. But she
Yeah, there's actually a lot of bullying within the Jehovah Witness
probably,
organization among kids. Like, not because the kids are bullying someone, but because the parents decided that their parents are bad association.
right. And like I said, this was my cousin. So it was my aunt and uncle that were telling her you can't associate. And
So I would just guess now that your parents, well, they were Jehovah Witnesses, but they did not really have the highest status in the congregation. Your father was not one of the elders.
not at this time. He did become one later, but no. I mean, um, they did definitely like my parents. My parents had a lot of friends and they were well liked. But my older sisters at the time had gotten into a lot of trouble. So my older sisters had already been disfellowshipped. They had, some of them, two of them had um left and been disfellowshipped and been with guys that were not Jehovah's Witnesses. So I think that they just thought that the Strilzuk girls, sorry, I said
Yeah. Because I noticed that, if the parents are, and I think also it's in the elders book, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, when they should assess the credibility of a witness, which
mhm,
would for them include a child, in this case first time you were 11, they
right,
will see, are the parents in good standing. So if your parents do less than 10 hours a month,
exactly.
then the child is not a credible witness, which is a big hole in the judicial process of witnesses. And I remember that we had one of these kind of outcast families in our congregation.
Hmm.
They were seen as bad association, but they went to all the meeting and field service. But we were like always. And I remember my father even told us that we should, when we went to the showers, like that told the other kid that we should watch that kid so he didn't masturbate.
Wow.
Yeah, he was just singled out. And so, well, and the same as you said, you're, as Jehovah Witness, you learn very much just to do what you're told.
Hmm.
So we were keeping an eye on another kid my same age in case he would masturbate, because my father, the elder, and the others, like, I had a suspicion on that kid's family. So that's why when you tell this story and they go straight to keeping the privacy of the 16-year-old and the father of your friend while you're getting slut shamed. It's
Well,
because your father was probably at that point not an elder, and your sisters were troublemakers, and
y-
then automatically you're not trustworthy
these
within
elders
the
had,
organization.
yes, and these elders had kids my age or my older sister's age, and I think that they didn't want me to associate with them after that. They just, kind of were like, she's bad news, just kind of pushed me out. And I started to have dreams that I was topless at the meetings and that all of my friends were pointing it out to me, and I didn't know it until they would point it out to me, and then I would cry and I'd have to leave. And I didn't understand why I was having that dream at the time, all the time. But I got therapy later. My therapist said you felt judged. You felt like everyone was judging you and laughing at you, and didn't know the truth about you. And that, she said, that explains that. So yeah, it was tough. And because I lost all of my friends all at once, um, my parents did allow me to have two friends at school that were not Jehovah's Witnesses, and I think that kept me sane. I think I would have went crazy if I didn't have that.
Hmm. So you had, yeah. So nothing happened to the father either, and they did not kind of warn the congregation, because if any Jehovah Witnesses watch this, I'm okay with a two-witness rule when it comes to convicting someone, but
Right.
you don't need two witnesses to protect children. If
Exactly.
someone say the house is on fire, you save the kids. You don't check with the second witness first.
Right. Well, and I think probably heard they always say that they're not psychologists, they're not therapists.
Yeah.
Think that they have a right to decide what's best for a child. It's like, no, you go to the authorities, you let them do their job. And the Bible even says that God places them there in that position. You know,
Yeah, and they are professionals. The Jehovah Witness elders are, some of them are nice and well-meaning, but they're not professionals when it comes to these things. And also, there's something, obstruction of justice, and DNA evidence
right.
might get lost or tampered with.
Well, and since
So
I've also seen the questions that they are supposed to ask, when there is alleged abuse, and it is very, did they say no? Did they scream? Did they leave? And those things are not correct. Those are abusive questions to ask a victim when there is freezing involved, and they don't understand that. They're not therapists. They're not.
what kind of question did the elders ask you when you were a minor?
Well, at this point, they didn't really ask me that many questions. They just talked to me about lying, because these two first instances, they were not the only ones. But the one that happened after that with my brother-in-law, that one that one was really bad. It happened often, and I didn't tell because I knew I wouldn't be believed. And I was afraid of my sister. I was afraid of losing my nephews. So I didn't talk about that one. So when they did find out everything that happened, when I did finally come out with all of it, they asked me, you know, did I orgasm? Was I penetrated? Did I moan? Did I move my body?
Did you moan?
Yeah,
So you were asked that question. How old were you?
16.
And the guys were,
My brother-in-law was 22, and he was married to my sister, and
yeah, but the people who asked the questions, the elders,
oh, they were probably in their 40s.
40s.
Yes.
Okay. That's not okay to for three grown men to be sitting and asking a young girl such a question. Doesn't matter if her mother or father is with
Right.
her.
And my father was there, but that's horrible also.
Yeah, I would not like, well, I'm a guy, I would not like to explain such stuff in front of my father. And obviously it's worse for a woman
Exactly.
with four men in a
Yes.
room talking about such thing.
Yes.
That is, I'm not as, even I understand that that's a crime for
Right. Yes. And when I would say no, I didn't, and I didn't like it, and I didn't want it to happen, they would tell me, "We don't believe you." it's obvious that you did. It's obvious that you wanted it.
I believe that women like you, it's easier for you, but the same kind of thing happens to us, and we have, as guys, we had to tell the elders about our masturbation and calendars and all this shit. But no one feels sorry for us. We're ugly and have beards, but you actually, I think, why couldn't you take women like you in your? I know so many sisters this happened to, that they are minors and they had to be sitting with 3 or 4 grown men for hours
And it
interrogated. I
hours,
think that would be a very good class action lawsuit, because it is a crime.
right.
And if Jehovah Witness watching this, it's brazen conduct. It's not okay for grown men to be asking such question to a girl. That's there on false pretenses, because you never got the elders book and you were told, as I was told, that this was a loving organization.
Yes. And as
So,
they're
so talk with the elders. You and me, we didn't expect to be sitting there for hours asking about the angle of penetration and stuff like that.
exactly. Yeah. So it was traumatizing for sure. And, after that happened, I was disfellowshipped and I believed it was my fault, especially with the questions that they were asking me and them telling me it's obvious that you wanted it. No matter what I was telling to them and not being believed, I started to just believe that, it was my fault. And, my dad was very angry. He actually almost got into a fist fight at that meeting because when they said they didn't believe me and um, my dad said, I could take this to the police and they can investigate it. And he wasn't a Jehovah's Witness either. He was um, not even studying. He was just my sister was. So because I think they liked my sister, um, and my sister had already called them and given them a story, they just automatically believed her. And he said, he's not even a Jehovah's Witness. Why are you protecting him? If I go to the police, it has nothing to do with Jehovah's Witnesses. And they said it's still a bad name on Jehovah because of your family, which did not make any.
Yeah, because no, it doesn't make any sense, because if police would find out that he's guilty, you're the victim, and
Right,
it's
right.
just you're the wrong kind of martyr.
They were is what they were doing, and he was so. I mean, he said, her sister is my daughter. Like that should be my choice of who I'm willing to protect with what I know. And they said, you're gonna get just your anger and your temper right now you know um is not showing like a good attitude, and just telling him he wasn't showing a Christian attitude. And so they were red in the face, but they were yelling at each other. And he said I could take her to the police right now and put him in jail. And they said, well, if you do that, then we could take privileges away from you, and you are not, you're giving God a bad name. So we got in the car and my dad said, if you
So
want,
could you just repeat that? He said that he could take you to the police.
my dad said he could take me to the police,
Yeah,
and
and then the elders threatening him that something would happen if he did that.
that they would take privileges away from him because then he wouldn't be going along with what they were saying, and that he would give God a bad name.
Yeah.
So we got in the car. My dad did not care. He got in the car and he said, if you want to
So
go,
sorry for interrupting you, but did anyone ask you? Oh, there are 4 men in a room that behaves inappropriately, Watchtower. Did any one of them ask you if you wanted to take it to the police?
no, they didn't make me feel like I had the option. They
It's
told
men talking with other men
Yes, they told me it was
and threatening other men, and you're just this object that we treat like,
they
yeah.
yes, and that's how I felt. I felt like, I just need to obviously take this discipline. I'm a horrible person. There's something wrong with me. There's obviously reasons that are my fault why I can't speak up. And so when I got in the car with my dad and he said, do you want to go to the police station? I will drive you there right now if you want to. And I said, no, I want to take my discipline. I don't want God to be upset with me. I want to do what's right. And if they feel that this is my fault, it probably is. And my dad
Mm.
said, that's wrong. That's wrong. But he just drove me home because I think he regrets now that he didn't just do it And I have actually brought that up to him. I said, I was a child. You knew I was molested when I was 11 and 14 and then 16. How was I supposed to know what I was supposed to do? I didn't understand the law. I didn't understand what was even right and wrong in those situations. And, he did apologize to me. Um, my mom actually blocked out the abuse of the 16-year-old, and she had gone through abuse as a child too. So when I got older, she became friends with the 16-year-old and told him he was like a son to her in front of me. And I stormed out of the room. I cried and slammed the door. My mom had no idea what was wrong. And when I told her, I said, he molested me. How could you ever say something like that to him? And she said, oh my gosh, I totally forgot. And so I feel like my parents also are so brainwashed, and they're so just underneath that organization's control, that they're not even fully human, if that makes sense. They don't
Yeah.
they don't think and reason correctly, and they push things out because that's what they've known.
Yeah, it's like the problem with Watchtower here and the abuse. One thing is the elders book and what they put. Then you have the culture. You have to see the culture, and then you have to see it from a child's perspective. Watchtower treated children like they are grown-ups. Like, oh, well, did the 11-year-old scream? Because guys that wrote the Bible and wrote the elders book, and I have to apologize for my gender, but they have this notion that's from the Bible, and I remember I learned it as a child, that a girl at one point make the choice, should I scream or not to scream? Because if I don't scream, I will enjoy this, but if I do scream, I will live in paradise. Like you have this moment of where you take a deliberate choice.
Well, and I have come to learn too, it wouldn't have even mattered if I enjoyed it. It wouldn't have mattered. It would have still been abuse. I was a child. No one was protecting me. My own sister was giving me alcohol. I was a 16-year-old girl, and there are many women who are abused who, have orgasms or have, enjoying it, and they have to live with the guilt of enjoying it because a man did that to them, where their body's reacting, not their mind.
Yeah.
It's still abuse, but I didn't enjoy it. I didn't.
No, but it doesn't matter because I was also abused as a child, not as much, but there was like a legitimate pedophile we had in school. He went to jail because he did a lot
Uh,
of stuff, but he lifted me up, threw me in a bed together with him, and he put his hands in my pants and touched my stuff, and I ran away. And I always felt this warm relationship with him after that.
mhm.
And I thought that he was such a nice guy that he didn't tell anyone what I had done.
Hmm.
And I was super afraid of being disfellowshipped because you have this overwhelming guilt. And, I knew as a kid that you cannot be disfellowshipped, or at least Watchtower always say that you can't be disfellowshipped if you not baptized. But, you have all this guilt thing. I actually thought I would be disfellowshipped if I told anyone. And I was very thankful for him not telling anyone. So the whole Watchtower guilt system
Yeah,
makes
manipulate.
it perfect because I was afraid of him telling the elders more than he was afraid of me telling the police.
So after I was disfellowshipped, my dad said to me, "You're going to write a letter because, to get reinstated, you have to write a letter stating how sorry you are." And he said, "In a month, you're writing a letter." And I said, "No, I don't feel like that's taking my discipline. I need to take my discipline." And he said, "I want you to write a letter and turn it in every month." Well, I waited 4 months, and I turned in a letter. And I remember going up to the brother and handing it to him, and him just ripping it out of my hands and not even looking at me. And they didn't even contact me, where normally they're supposed to meet with you every time you write a letter and talk to you about, how you're feeling or what you're doing to change and all of those things. They didn't do that. So my dad called and said, Meleah wrote a letter. Why haven't you contacted her? And they said, it's not even been long enough. My dad said, next month you're writing another one. I did. I wrote one every month, and I can't even tell you how hard I was on myself. I wrote in there that I felt like I was the lowest person on the earth, that I felt like I didn't deserve God's love. I felt like I didn't deserve any of the friends in the congregation, and that I was so sorry for the pain I had caused everyone. And I just completely took the blame on myself in all of these letters. And they would read these letters and disregard them and disregard them and disregard them. And it was not until I was disfellowshipped for 7 months that they reinstated me. And even when they reinstated me, it was not loving, it was not caring. It was like they were tired of me writing letters, is how I felt. And, I got reinstated. I was not welcomed back into the congregation. There were a few, that loved me and cared about me. There were ones close to my family, mostly older people, my parents' age and stuff. But all of the teenagers, I stayed the same. I didn't have friends. I didn't have any of the relationships I had had before. Um, and, so during my disfellowshipping, my mother allowed me to have those two friends at school. And they really like saw my anxiety. I had panic attacks at school. And they were really there for me. And I think they gave me another perspective other than just Jehovah's Witnesses, which helped me a lot. Even though I never left until just, a few years ago. I stayed a witness. I always went back. I've been disfellowshipped 4 times. Um, which now I realize, the patterns that I had after being abused with men are because of my abuse. And every time
Yeah.
that I would, you know, do something that the organization thought was wrong and I would get disfellowshipped, I would be really hard on myself and think I have to get back. I have to get back. And it wasn't until I went to therapy that I was like, oh my gosh, they made everything worse for me. They made my trauma worse. They made just everything I went through so much harder than it had to be, and never helped me. Never there for me, never helped me. My parents did. My parents were there. And I was allowed to move back in with them when I was disfellowshipped. So, they were there for me, but no one else. So, yeah, it was tough. But after I got reinstated, my sister immediately wanted me back in her life. So I
Mm.
didn't talk to you about this before, but growing up, I was her little sidekick. I was, I remember being like 9 years old and her being a teenager, and I went everywhere with her. When she got a car, she took me everywhere. She'd buy me gum. I wouldn't tell on her when she had her worldly boyfriend over, and she just thought I was the cool sister. So all growing up, I kind of fell into this position of, you know, going along to get along, doing whatever my sister wanted, and I felt like she was my best friend. But I also really looked up to her. She was beautiful. She was popular. So I wanted to be like her when I got older. Well, before I got disfellowshipped, I was with her all the time. Um, and so afterwards, um, I called her and apologized for everything. And um, she really enjoyed it. She held it over me big time. And so she was like, I forgive you, and I want you to come over. And I told her I'll come over, but I won't be alone with him. I said, I don't want him there. I don't want um, ever to be alone with him. And if he's there, I'm not staying. And so I said, I'll do things with you outside of your house, but I'm not going over there. And so that's how it was for about a year. And then she would just disregard my feelings. And, she brought me over there when she felt like she was ready. And I didn't want to be. And I would tell her I don't like being around him. And she'd be like, you need to put it in the past. It's over with. And he's my husband. And you need to put it in the past. So I said, fine, I'll be around him, but I won't be alone with him. Well, whenever she wanted, she'd take the boys and go to the store and leave me there. And I'd be like, I told you I don't want to be alone with him. Well, I would just leave and go outside or go for a walk, whatever. But she just never, ever cared about my feelings. Um,
Mm.
so as it got, time went on. We spent a lot of time together, and I come to realize as an adult that she put me in a lot of positions that I think that she wanted me to be what she made me out to be. So I found out she had told everyone and anyone that she could about his side or her side of the story, what happened, which I still don't know what that is. Um, but people would come up to me and be like, is it true what she said about you? And, um, I started to find out more and more of the things that she would say, that it was, a mutual affair, that I seduced him, that I came onto him, that I took my clothes off for him, like all these horrible stories. And I think as time went on and the more that I heard these kinds of things, and I thought she was my best friend, it really started to hurt and it started to bring up all this trauma all over again. So I went to therapy for it. And that was where I realized that it wasn't my fault. And then I had to deal with anger for years. And I ended up confronting both of them and telling them it wasn't my fault. I never should have taken the blame. I never should have been disfellowshipped. And I did this with two brothers in their congregation. I called their elders and I said, I want a confrontation. So after the confrontation, and this was only 3.5 years ago. This
Good for you. Keep telling.
Okay. So just 3.5 years ago, I did this. And at the end of the meeting, so during the meeting, my brother-in-law just broke down crying. He cried hard and he said, "You're right. You didn't do anything. I did it all. I know it." He admitted to it, but he said, and at this point, he is a Jehovah's Witness. He got
Yeah,
baptized
of course.
9 years ago or something like that. And I said, the fact that you guys could tell your own sons, who how much I love and have a close relationship, that you could tell them that I was this person that I wasn't. I was like, it's absolutely horrible. And they have turned against me and they think that this is, something that I wanted. And my sister the whole time was shaking her head. Nope, nope, nope. Like it wasn't his fault. It was both of you. And I said, how can you be watching him cry and tell me that he did this to me and this was his fault? And he's taking the blame. And how can you sit there and say that it was both of us? And she said, I saw it with my own eyes. And I said, what did you see? Tell me what you saw with your own eyes. And she said, you would prance around in a bikini in front of him. And I said, you mean when you were in a bikini or we were at the lake? Like that makes me guilty of having an affair. She had nothing, but I think that her mind, she can't accept that it wasn't my fault. She wants to blame me and not blame her husband. And I've come to realize I'm never going to get, any um, remorse from her for anything she's done. She's the same as she's always been. But I did feel a little bit of closure from him admitting to it. That was good to hear. So at the end of the meeting, the brothers said, okay, so the whole point of this meeting is so that you can forgive me. I said the point of this meeting was so that I could come clean and have closure and heal from what has happened to me, because it was wrong the way everything was dealt with. That's not the point of this. I said, I'm not God. I don't choose whether he's forgiven or not. I don't even know what he's like anymore. And they said, well, he's seeking out privileges of the congregation and he's been doing really well. And we want him to be able to give talks and we want him to be able to, um, help in the congregation. So can you write down that you have forgiven him so that he can have these privileges? And I said, no, I'm not doing that. I said, I've already protected enough other people that have been harmed from my abuse.
Because what he did was basically a crime in the state you're in,
Yeah.
and they ask you to sign a paper that you forgive him.
Yes.
That means that they would have a paper, if you would have, and probably other ones have,
Yes.
that you would have a paper that proves that there was a crime and the elders knew about it.
Right.
So you understand why this pedophile archive, why they really don't want to give it away, and why they really try to remove all the archives.
Mhm. Yes. And
Like the whitewashed graves of Israel.
yes.
Because elders do stupid stuff because they are elders, basically. And like the idea, I'm not a lawyer, but my mind, when you told, it's obvious that you create a paper that shows both that it happened, that he admitted, and the elders knew about it.
Right. Yeah. It's so true.
They are not so smart. Sometimes I feel sorry for the governing body that has to deal with all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, they work for free.
Right. Yes. I just hope it keeps coming out. I hope that these videos help other people to talk and get it out, because it's terrible what they're hiding.
But what about what I said earlier? I know a lot of sisters that were into very intrusive uh, meetings with elders about this.
Yes.
What about lawsuit? What do you call it? Class action lawsuit?
Right. You mean for me?
Yeah, and other sisters. I know. I'm a guy living in Norway, but I can give you a list of names of people that experience the same.
Yeah, I
But you
actually
have to be sitting and focus on the sisters now, the
right.
women. but
Yeah.
but to be sitting with three elders or three elders and an extra male uncle or someone,
The problem is the statute of limitations.
that's abuse. That's worse than the actual crime many times.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I have looked into a lawsuit. The problem is the statute of limitations, depending on your state, you only have so many years to prosecute, or convict or whatever. Um, so I think that New York is different than Oregon because this happened to me in Oregon, but New York's laws are different. So I think that if I was to have a lawsuit against the actual organization, I could get somewhere, but I couldn't against the congregation. So I'm
Mm,
kind of considering all of that. I have a lot going on in my life right now, but trying to do one thing at a time. Just my YouTube videos are hard to find time to make, but
yeah,
yeah,
tell me about it.
yeah. I'm happy that my children didn't get baptized. And, I have a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And
Mm,
the older two are just completely relieved that they don't have to be in that religion anymore. And, we started celebrating their birthdays and they're just so much happier, even though they have to still deal with the pain of losing all of my family and all of the friends overnight that we had. And, they don't just push me away and shun me, but they push my kids away as well. Like their bad association now, which
yeah.
is so harmful to a child.
Your father, the fist fight guy, what is he doing? He's still fist fighting for his daughter, or he dumped her when Watchtower said so?
Yeah, I mean, that was a long time ago. I'm 41 and I was 16 at the time and I think that he became an elder later on and he's constantly told or reading that leave it in Jehovah's hands. And that's what they would tell me when there was no answer. They would tell me just leave it in Jehovah's hands. And so by me
Mm.
bringing all of this up, I've spoken to them and I've talked to them since leaving about things I've learned about the organization and how this is rampant. It's not just me because they used to say it's an imperfect organization. It has imperfect men. This doesn't happen all the time. This doesn't happen everywhere. Like this, they made me feel like this was just my own issue. And so coming to find out how big of a problem it is worldwide, then I am like, no, that's true. This is horrible. And but my parents are telling me that I'm taking it into my own hands and that I'm not trusting in God to take care of it. And that even if it doesn't get dealt with now, it will, you know, in the new system or at Armageddon or whatever. So,
Yeah, a solution to everything.
yes.
I have been thinking
Oh,
about making a video like Watchtower in the UN, because they used to be in the UN,
yeah.
but it would be fun to make a skit with a Watchtower representative in the UN. When they talk about world hunger, how can we find food for everyone? Watchtower, we could kill 7 billion people and then there will be enough food for those that are left. They solve all the problems with
I,
killing 7 billion people.
yeah,
I,
it's so,
it's a weird organization. But I have one question now. You were disfellowshipped 4 times.
yes.
Yeah. So you were disfellowshipped 4 times and you came back because you believed it's the truth.
Yes.
So the interesting would be, how did you wake up? Why did you realize that, no, I'm not going back any more times because it is not true? What happened?
So I told you about how I confronted my brother-in-law and my sister 3 years ago.
Yeah.
The way that they handled that really upset me. And I tried to figure out how God was involved in that. Like, did he want me to forgive him? Is that really what was from God? And it confused me. It didn't feel right. And then also in 2014, they had the new understanding of the generation overlapping. That was the first time that I was like, how can they just come up with a new explanation. So I did start to have a little bit of doubt before I left. And that was the first time that I really questioned, is this the right religion? Because there's no scriptures backing up what they're saying.
No.
And it didn't make sense. I just felt like they were buying themselves more time because 2014 had come, 100 years since 1914. It didn't make sense. So, anyways, that was the first point of doubt. But then I confronted my sister and my brother-in-law, and the way that was handled, I did not feel was correct. Again, after all of my old elders meetings and having therapy, I found out, the elders did things so wrong. So in my marriage that I was in, I had been married for 15 years, and my husband did not support me talking and speaking out about the religion, about my family, about any of it. He said, "Why are you doing this? You're causing drama. You are bringing stuff up from the past. Leave it alone." And I said, "You have the mentality of Jehovah's Witnesses. They just sweep everything under the rug. And I'm tired of it." I said, "I'm done with that. Like, I have been shut up my entire life. I've been told I can't talk about it. When I do talk about it, I'm told I'm a liar." I said, "I am so done with it." And I said, "If you're not going to support me, I'm doing this by myself." And so when some things happened, I got uninvited from coming forward to my sister. I was uninvited to her son's weddings because I had already had an invitation, and around this time they were getting married, and I was uninvited. And I never had an opportunity to talk to them or tell them my side of the story. And I had never really tried to, because it was their father. And, I didn't know if he had changed over the years. I didn't want to do that to them. I wanted to tell them my side of the story, but I would never have gone into detail about their dad and what he did to me. But I still wanted them to hear me. You know what I mean? So I think being uninvited to their weddings, everyone in the organization, again, treating me like I was a bad person, my family, um, all just shunning me. And I wasn't even disfellowshipped. I was just trying to deal with my past, and I was trying to get closure. And once um, my husband didn't support me, I felt at that time, our marriage was already coming. It was not a good marriage. It was already coming to an end. And so I decided I needed to be on my own. I needed to deal with this. I needed people around me that would support me. And so I told him I wanted a divorce, and he agreed. And so he was like, "Well, we're going to have to talk to the brothers." And I said, "You can talk to the brothers." I said, "I'm so done talking to the brothers." I said, "I never get anything good from it, and I'm over it." And so he went to the brothers, and then they kept calling me and calling me, wanting to meet me. Well, I ended up just staying away for a long time. I quit going to meetings, and I felt like I needed my own space and time to deal and think. And I I moved out. I had my own place. I had not been with my husband for months, and I did meet another man, and I, had sex with him. And so my husband, I had talked to him about everything, and he told the elders, I had committed adultery. And so when I went to the elders meeting to talk about us getting divorced, they were telling me again how horrible I was, and that, this was a bad decision, that I was, giving a bad name to Jehovah. It was just triggered. Every sentence they
Mm.
would trigger me back to my childhood. And, I felt like I was actually becoming healthier and stronger, and I was getting a voice, and I was, I had been in therapy, and I was proud of where I was actually. And I didn't feel guilty for what I had done. I didn't, I kind of did, when it came to God, I was like, I don't know what is wrong and wrong anymore. I didn't really understand what was okay with God and what wasn't, because I knew he was not okay with the way I'd been treated my whole life. And I knew that the elders were not giving me good instructions and like advice, and everything that they told me just was painful. But they just beat me up emotionally in that meeting, and I had a panic attack, and I started to throw up, and I had to go into the bathroom, and I was bawling and crying. And when I came back, I hadn't even finished the meeting with them. And when I came back, they said, "We decided to disfellowship you." And I think I was like, this is just not God's organization. And
That's the fourth time
yes, this
you
was
were disfellowship.
just 2 years ago. This is when I left, just 2 years ago. Well, not even 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years ago in March. So this is recent. And I said, yeah, I'm done with this. And then I tried to explain everything to my parents. And I said, I just don't think this is God's organization. I just don't, there's too much corruption. And I said, every single elders meeting, they have made me feel like I'm not worthy of God's love and that I'm worthless. And,
Yeah.
um, and the shunning started immediately. And, they were like, well, if you're disfellowshipped, you need to take your discipline, you need to come back, and you're just focusing on the negative, you're focusing on the bad. And my mom even told me that I had a attitude like Satan because I wasn't being humble. And I was like, you guys even know what I've been through. And they always were there for me. When I confronted my sister and brother, they were on the phone listening, and they backed me up, and they were angry at my sister. They still don't have a relationship with her because of everything that happened. They don't like her. And yeah, so I was like, it's just so messed up, the way that they brainwash you and change your thinking and separate you from your children, and the unhealthy ways of teaching is just, it's disgusting to me now.
Yeah. So you waking up was basically that you saw the organization as loveless.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I started to see the protecting of the men. Like, I think that they really do protect men, and they protect pedophiles, and they berate women and put them down. And when we need help and we need love and we need support, they abuse us even more than the sexual abuse. It's horrible. When you've already gone through something so traumatizing, to have someone tell you you're a bad person, you're making bad choices, you're doing bad things, God's disappointed in you, your family's disappointed in you, you're failing your children. I mean, yeah, I understand why so many people commit suicide. And honestly, I did have a moment after that meeting where I was like, why am I even in this life? No one cares about me.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're still here. The problem with the Watchtower organization, if you boil it down to one thing, it's that the organization is more important than anything.
Yes.
More important than children, more important than the elders, more important than the real estate. It's like all the time, what's important for Watchtower?
Right.
Pushing product, recruiting members,
Right.
whatever. Everything is so like the your brother-in-law, they wanted you to write that you could forgive him. Why? Because you forgave him? No, because they needed him.
Exactly. And I,
And then the favorite space troll of Watchtower, aka Jehovah, need a written statement in the Watchtower archive. He's capable of reading heart and leading stuff with the Holy Ghost, but no, he also need a paper in the archive to know that you are capable of forgiving someone
right.
after the elders decide to leave stuff in Jehovah's hand. It doesn't make any sense unless you just realize that this is a printing company.
Yes. And then I, after that, and found out all the things that they are hiding, and about the founders, Rutherford and Russell, and Beth Sarum, and all this stuff I'd never had heard of before. And then I read the finished mystery, and that was when I was like, okay, this isn't just about my experience. That organization. When I
Sorry.
read it,
No, I'm just picturing you sitting and reading the Finnish
oh,
mystery and all the crazy stuff Jehovah Witnesses used to believe, and they believed that Jesus Christ was walking around the planet Earth and said, the Catholics, no, I don't like them.
well,
They are not close enough to the truth.
right.
And then
Our,
the Lutherans and everyone, and then they picked Jehovah Witnesses
yeah,
with crazy Rutherford as God's one true religion.
yeah, and he said prophet even. Rutherford says Russell was a prophet, and that he was writing the book after he was dead. And I'm just like, they don't tell you any of this stuff. They keep it all hush hush. And so
Yeah.
that was when I had all of the strength, because I had the proof then, that it wasn't just about my own experience. It was like proof that this was not the right religion. I am one in a million, of people that are dealing with the same kind of thing. And that's when I decided I need to talk about this. So no one can shut me up now.
And you have a YouTube.
Meleah Thompson Strilzuk.
So thank you very much and see you in paradise.